The morning started like any other on Seoul Orbital Station. Doctor stood near the wide observation window, holding a cup of coffee and watching Earth spin slowly below. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from up here. Beautiful. He never got tired of this view, even after 15 years of working in space. Behind him, his research team worked quietly at their stations. They were studying alien plant samples from a distant world. Simple work, safe work, the kind of work that made feel like humanity was finally finding its place among the stars. That feeling died in the next 3 seconds. The first explosion came without warning. One moment was sipping his coffee. The next moment the station shook so hard that he fell to the floor. Alarms screamed to life. Red lights flashed everywhere. Through the window, he saw something that stopped his heart. Ships, hundreds of them. They filled the space around Earth like a swarm of angry insects. Their hulls were dark green, covered in sharp angles and cruel shapes. Recognized them immediately. Everyone in the galaxy knew those ships. The Dominion had come to Earth. Pulled himself up and ran toward the escape pods. Around him, his colleagues screamed and stumbled. Another explosion ripped through the station. The walls cracked. Air began rushing out through the gaps. Grabbed a young researcher named Bora and dragged her toward the pods. "Move, everyone, move," he shouted. They reached the pod bay just as the third explosion hit. Half of his team vanished in a flash of light and fire. He did not have time to mourn. He pushed Bora into a pod, climbed in after her, and hit the launch button. The pod shot away from the dying station. Through the small window, watched Seoul Orbital break apart. Thousands of people had lived there. Scientists, families, children. Now it was just burning metal falling toward Earth. Across the planet, the same scene repeated again and again. They attacked every human station, every satellite, every ship they could find. They did not ask for surrender first. They did not send any warning. They simply started killing. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Earth's flagship. She was 58 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. Her hand stayed steady on the command console, even as reports of death poured in from every direction. "Admiral, we've lost contact with Luna Base." "Admiral, the European defense grid is down." "Admiral, estimated civilian casualties have passed 100 million. Listened to each report with a face made of stone. Inside, her heart was breaking, but admirals could not afford to show weakness. Not now, not when her people needed her. "How many ships do we have?" she asked. 47 combat-ready vessels, Admiral. The fleet numbers over 3,000. 47 against 3,000. Those numbers meant death. Everyone on the bridge knew it. Some of them were already crying quietly at their stations. On the main screen, a new transmission appeared. A commander filled the image. His face was reptilian, covered in dark scales with eyes like yellow fire. When he spoke, his voice was cold and cruel. "Humans of Earth," he said, "I am War Master of the Dominion. Your planet now belongs to us. You have 72 hours to surrender completely. Every human will become property of the Dominion. If you refuse, we will burn your world until nothing remains. You are weak. You are primitive. You are alone. No one in the galaxy will save you. This is your only warning." The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. Captain stood at her station, her young face pale with shock. She was only 26 years old, commander of the patrol vessel. This morning, she had been excited about her upcoming promotion. Now she wondered if she would live to see tomorrow. Admiral said quietly, "What do we do?" Did not answer immediately. She stared at the screen where the commander had been. Outside, Earth burned. Her home burned. 400 million people were already dead, and the number climbed higher with every passing minute. The thought humans were weak. The whole galaxy thought humans were weak. For 200 years, humanity had tried to be peaceful. They had followed every law of the galactic conquered. They had smiled and bowed and accepted their place as newcomers among the stars. And what had it brought them? This, death, destruction, a galaxy that watched their suffering and did nothing. Remembered her grandmother's stories about old Earth, about wars fought with primitive weapons, about humans who refused to surrender even when all hope was lost, about a species that had clawed its way up from nothing, surviving ice ages and plagues and countless disasters. They did not understand what they had awakened. "Send a message to Earth Command," said. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Tell them to open the vault." Her officers looked at her with confusion. Most of them did not know what the vault was. They were about to learn. Admiral asked, "What is the vault?" Turned to face her crew. For the first time since the attack began, she smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator showing its teeth. "For 80 years," said, "humanity has pretended to be harmless. We followed the conquered's rules. We limited our weapons. We acted like good, obedient newcomers, but we are not stupid. We always knew this day might come. We prepared." She pressed a button on her console. Across Earth, in hidden bunkers and secret asteroid bases, ancient machines began to wake up. "They gave us 72 hours, continued. "They think that is generous. They think we will spend that time crying and begging." Her smile grew wider. "They are wrong. In 72 hours, the Dominion will learn why humanity survived for 10,000 years on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. They wanted war. They will get one. And the galaxy will watch in horror." Far below on Earth, in a bunker beneath island, President received Admiral Park's message. He was a kind man, a diplomat who had spent his life building peace. But as he read the words on his screen, something changed in his eyes. He turned to General Han, who stood waiting beside him. "Open the vault," the president said. "Show them what we really are." General Han nodded. She had waited 30 years for this order. Part of her had hoped it would never come. But another part, the part that had watched her daughter die when Sol Orbital fell, felt something dark and terrible rising in her chest. Humanity had tried to be good. They had tried to be peaceful, and the galaxy had repaid them with fire and death. No more. The vault opened, and across the stars, in their comfortable ships and safe planets, the species of the galaxy felt something they had never felt before. They felt afraid of humans. The day the sky burned was the day humanity stopped pretending. The wanted monsters, they were about to meet them. 36 hours had passed since the attack. The fleet hung in space like a wall of death, waiting for humanity to surrender. Their commanders were patient. They had done this before to other species. First came the terror, then the begging, then the submission. It always worked. But no begging came from Earth. Deep beneath island, in a bunker built into ancient volcanic rock, the leaders of humanity gathered around a long metal table. President sat at the head, his face tired but his eyes sharp. General Han stood beside a massive screen that showed Earth's current state. The numbers were terrible. 600 million dead. 12 major cities destroyed. The planet's defense grid was in ruins. Around the table sat admirals, scientists, and politicians. Some wanted to surrender. They spoke of saving what remained, of protecting the survivors, of accepting rule to prevent total extinction. President listened to them all. Then he spoke. "I have heard your arguments for surrender," he said slowly. "Now let me tell you why we will not surrender. Not today, not ever." He gestured to General Han. She pressed a button and the screen changed. Instead of destruction, it showed something else. Hidden places, secret facilities, weapons that should not exist. "For 80 years," President continued, "every human leader has known about this. We call it the vault. It is our insurance against exactly this kind of attack." A younger politician raised his hand. "What is in this vault?" General Han answered, "Everything the Galactic conquered forbids. Everything they told us we were too primitive to build. Everything we built anyway." The screen showed the first weapon. It looked like a simple missile, small and silver. But the data beside it made several people gasp. Project Prometheus, General Hand said. Antimatter warheads. One of these can crack a moon in half. We have 12,000 of them. She pressed another button. The screen showed swarms of small drones, millions of them, flying through space like metal locusts. Project Self-Replicating Combat Drones. They use enemy debris to build copies of themselves. Kill one and it becomes 3 more. We have enough to darken the skies of 100 worlds. Another button, another weapon. This time, the screen showed ships vanishing and reappearing in different places instantly. Project Ghost, Reality Fold drives. Our ships can move from one point to another without crossing the space between. No defense can stop what it cannot track. Silence filled the bunker. Even those who had argued for surrender stared at the screen with wide eyes. Why, someone whispered, why did we build these things? A new voice answered. It came from a woman in a simple gray uniform who had been sitting quietly in the corner. Engineer, the designer of Project Prometheus, stood up slowly. She was 60 years old, with white hair and gentle eyes that hid a brilliant mind. Because we remembered, said. Humanity has a long memory. We remembered when the conquered laughed at our first ships. We remembered when other species cheated us in trade, knowing we could not fight back. We remembered every insult, every dismissal, every time someone called us primitive apes who should have stayed on our little planet. She walked toward the screen, her footsteps echoing in the quiet room. We smiled and nodded and accepted it all, but we also built, in secret, in silence. We prepared for the day when someone would decide that humanity did not deserve to exist. That day has come. And now the galaxy will learn that humans are very, very good at one thing. What thing? President asked. Turned to face him. Her gentle eyes had turned cold. War. 2 hours later, the activation began. In an asteroid belt beyond Mars, hidden facilities that had pretended to be mining stations powered up their true systems. Thousands of Prometheus missiles loaded into launch tubes. On the dark side of Earth's moon, underground factories released swarms of drones. In deep space, where no one ever looked, ghost ships that had been sleeping for decades came awake. Engineer sat at the central control station, her fingers moving across holographic keyboards. Beside her, Admiral Park watched the activation progress on a dozen screens. How long until we can strike? Asked. 12 hours, replied. The Ghost Fleet needs time to reach optimal positions. They gave us 72 hours. We will use less than half. Far away in the command ship of the fleet, War Master received a strange report. His sensors had detected energy signatures from places that should have been empty. Asteroid fields, dead moons, empty regions of space. What is happening? He demanded. His officers could not answer. The signatures were unlike anything in their databases, but they were clearly weapons, thousands of them, tens of thousands. That was impossible. Humans had 47 ships. Humans were weak. Humans followed conquered laws and built nothing dangerous. Laughed, it must be a trick, some desperate attempt to scare his fleet. He ordered his crews to ignore the readings and maintain their positions. This was his last mistake. Back on Earth, President stood before a camera. His image would be broadcast to every human on the planet and every ship in the fleet. He took a deep breath and began to speak. My fellow humans, 2 days ago our world was attacked without warning. Millions of our brothers and sisters are dead. Our cities burn. Our stations are destroyed. The Dominion believes they have broken us. His voice grew stronger. They are wrong. For 80 years we have hidden our true strength. We did not want war. We wanted peace. We wanted to join the galactic community as friends. But friendship requires respect, and the galaxy has shown us none. Behind him, screens showed the weapons activating. ghost ships flickering into position, drone swarms assembling into massive formations, Prometheus missiles arming their terrible warheads. Today, that changes. Today, humanity shows the galaxy what we can do when we stop pretending. We do not ask for mercy, because we will show none to those who attack our home. We do not ask for help because we do not need it. President leaned forward, his eyes burning with cold fire. To the Dominion, you gave us 72 hours to surrender. I give you 12 hours to pray to whatever gods you believe in, because after that, we are coming, and we will not stop until your military is ash and your leaders kneel before human justice. He paused, then delivered his final words. To the galaxy that watched our people die and did nothing, remember this moment. Remember what you allowed to happen, and remember what happened next. Earth does not forget. Earth does not forgive. Earth strikes back. The broadcast ended. Across the planet, in bunkers and shelters and hidden caves, 6 billion surviving humans watched their president's message. Many had been crying. Many had been hopeless. But as they saw the weapons, as they heard the words, something changed. Fear became anger. Despair became determination. Grief became cold, patient hatred. They had made a terrible miscalculation. They had attacked a species that had spent 10,000 years fighting itself, a species that had mastered the art of destruction long before it reached the stars, a species that had always known, deep in its bones, that the universe was dangerous and only the strong survived. Humanity had played nice for 2 centuries. That game was over. Engineer completed the final activation sequence. She looked at Admiral Park with tired eyes. "It is done," she said. "The weapons are ready." Nodded slowly. "Then let us teach the galaxy a lesson it will never forget." In 12 hours, the counterattack would begin. In 12 hours, they would learn the true meaning of human fury. The galaxy had wanted to see what humanity could do. They were about to find out. It was beautiful in its own way, a planet of red deserts and orange skis, where great cities rose like monuments to military power. For 3,000 years, the Dominion had conquered species after species. Their empire stretched across 200 star systems. Their fleet was the largest in the galaxy. They had never lost a war. That record was about to end. Commodore sat in the command chair of the Silent Blade, lead ship of the Ghost Fleet's Vengeance Division. He was 43 years old, with a square jaw and eyes that showed no emotion. For 20 years, he had trained for a mission he hoped would never happen. Now it was happening, and he felt nothing but cold purpose. Around him, 11 other ghost ships waited in the darkness between stars. They were invisible to every sensor system known to galactic science. They were weapons built for one purpose: to deliver death to anyone who threatened Earth. "Status report," said. Lieutenant looked up from her tactical station. She was 24 years old, the youngest officer in the fleet, and also the most talented. Her mind worked like a computer, processing battle data faster than most people could read. "All ships report ready, Commodore. Enemy fleet positions confirmed. 800 warships defending the home system. Orbital defense platforms around the planet number approximately 300. Time to target. We can fold into attack position in 30 seconds. Nodded, he opened a channel to the other ships. "Vengeance Division, this is Commodore. In 60 hours, they murdered 600 million of our people, our children, our families, our friends. They did this because they thought we were weak. They thought we would not fight back." His voice dropped to a cold whisper. "They were wrong. Today we teach them. Today we break them for Earth, for our dead. No mercy." 11 voices responded as one. "No mercy." Closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of his daughter who had been studying on Sol Orbital Station. She was 7 years old. She had loved butterflies. Now she was gone, along with everyone else on that station. When he opened his eyes, they held something terrible. Begin fold jump. The ghost ships vanished from normal space. For exactly 1 second, they existed nowhere. Then they reappeared inside the defensive perimeter, where it was supposed to be impossible for any enemy to reach. Chaos erupted. The sensor operators could not believe what they were seeing. 12 human ships had appeared from nowhere, right in the middle of their home defense fleet. It was impossible. No technology could do that. The Conquered had strict laws against developing such weapons. War Master, commanding from his flagship, screamed orders at his crews. Destroy them. All ships fire. Kill them now. 800 warships turned their weapons toward the tiny human force. Millions of energy bolts and missiles filled the void. It was enough firepower to destroy a moon. None of it hit. The ghost ships moved in ways that broke the laws of physics. They flickered in and out of reality, appearing in one place, then another, then another. Each time they appeared, their weapons fired, and those weapons did not miss. Lieutenant controlled the targeting systems of the Silent Blade with absolute precision. Her fingers danced across her console, selecting targets, calculating angles, predicting enemy movements. To her, this was not chaos. It was a puzzle, and she was very good at puzzles. Target acquired, firing. A single beam of concentrated antimatter struck the largest battleship. The vessel did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, with 3,000 soldiers aboard. The next moment, there was only empty space. Across the battle zone, the same scene repeated. Human ships appeared, fired, and vanished before they could react. One by one, the great warships of the Dominion died. War Master watched his fleet die around him. His scales had turned pale with shock. This was not possible. Humans were supposed to be weak. Humans were supposed to be primitive. Humans did not have weapons like this. Retreat, he ordered. All ships retreat to the planet. But there was no retreat. The ghost ships were everywhere and nowhere. They struck from angles that did not make sense, from directions that should not exist. In 9 minutes, 400 warships were destroyed. In 12 minutes, 600. Then the drones arrived. The swarms descended on the home system like a metal plague. Billions of tiny machines, each one carrying enough explosive power to destroy a tank. They poured out of fold space in waves that blocked out the stars. The planetary defense platforms opened fire. They destroyed thousands of drones, millions of drones. But for every drone that died, the wreckage reformed into 3 more. The swarms did not shrink. They grew. On the surface of the civilians looked up at the sky. They had never seen anything like this. The orange sky turned black with drones. The sound of distant explosions rolled across the red deserts like thunder. But the explosions only hit military targets. This was the part that confused everyone watching, both on the and across the galaxy. The human weapons were precise, impossibly precise. They destroyed military bases, weapons factories, command centers, and warships. They did not touch cities. They did not target civilians. They did not strike hospitals or schools or homes. Admiral Park watched the battle from Earth, receiving real-time reports through quantum communication links. When her officers asked why she had ordered no civilian attacks, she gave a simple answer. We are not them. We do not murder innocents. We kill soldiers who chose to fight. We destroy weapons that threaten us, but we do not commit genocide. That is the difference between humanity and monsters. On the flagship, War Master made a desperate decision. He opened a communication channel to the human ships. Human Commander, I wish to negotiate. Please, we can discuss terms. Commodore received the message. He thought about his daughter again, about her laugh, about the way she had hugged him goodbye before he left for deep space patrol, about how he would never hold her again. His response was brief. You had 72 hours to negotiate. You chose to kill instead. Now there is nothing to discuss. The silent blade folded into position directly above the high command building. A single Prometheus missile launched from its tubes. It fell through the atmosphere like a falling star, bright and terrible. The blast wave flattened everything within 10 kilometers. The high command building, filled with the admirals and generals who had planned Earth's destruction, vanished in a flash of light. Lieutenant marked another target destroyed on her display. Her face showed no emotion. This was just mathematics now, numbers on a screen, targets eliminated, mission objectives achieved. 23 minutes after the battle began, it ended. The home defense fleet was gone. 94% of their military capacity had been destroyed. The greatest military power in the galaxy had been broken in less than half an hour. War Master knelt on the deck of his damaged flagship, surrounded by the bodies of his crew. His scales were burned. His eyes were empty. He had commanded fleets for 60 years. He had conquered 12 species. He had never imagined anything like this. A holographic image appeared before him. Admiral Park looked down at the defeated with eyes like ice. "You gave us 72 hours," she said. "We needed 48. Remember this, War Master. Remember what happens when you attack Earth, and pray that your species learns quickly because our patience has ended." The image vanished. Across the galaxy, other species watched the battle recordings in silence. They had seen the humiliate and enslave countless civilizations. They had believed they were unstoppable. Now they watched 12 human ships destroy 800 warships in 9 minutes. They watched drone swarms consume an entire military in an hour. They watched the greatest empire in known space brought to its knees by a species everyone had considered primitives. Fear spread through the galaxy like a cold wind. Species that had ignored humanity suddenly paid very close attention. Species that had laughed at human weakness stopped laughing. The humans had hidden their true strength for 80 years. What else were they hiding? In the silence that followed the battle, that question haunted every sentient mind in the galaxy. Axis Prime was the heart of galactic civilization, a massive space station, larger than most moons, where representatives from 200 species gathered to make decisions that affected trillions of lives. Here, in the Great Assembly Hall, the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in floating seats arranged in a vast circle, discussing trade and territory and the future of known space. Today, the Assembly Hall was silent. 5 days had passed since humanity broke the Dominion. News of the battle had spread to every corner of the galaxy. Every species, every planet, every station had watched the recordings. They had seen the impossible weapons. They had seen the precision strikes. They had seen an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for destroyed in minutes. Now, for the first time in history, a human would address the full galactic conquered. Ambassador Ryu walked slowly into the assembly hall. He was 55 years old, with a calm face and gray temples. For 30 years, he had served as Earth's diplomatic representative. He had attended countless meetings where other species talked over him, ignored him, and treated him like a child pretending to sit at the adult table. Today, no one talked over him. No one ignored him. Every eye in the hall followed his quiet steps toward the center platform. The silence was heavy. Species that had ruled the stars for millions of years watched the human ambassador with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. Some seats were empty, representatives of species that had been allies of the, now too afraid to show their faces. Ambassador Ryu reached the center platform and stood still for a moment, looking around the vast chamber. Then he began to speak. 214 years ago, humanity entered this hall for the first time. We came with hope. We came with dreams of friendship and cooperation. We came believing that the galaxy would welcome us as fellow travelers among the stars. His voice was soft, but in the silence everyone heard every word. We were wrong. From our first day in this conquered, we faced mockery and discrimination. We were called primitives, Apes, newcomers who should know our place, we accepted this. We thought that if we were patient, if we proved ourselves, things would change. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Things did not change. When other species cheated us in trade, the conquered did nothing. When our colonists were attacked by pirates, the conquered offered sympathy and no assistance. When we asked for help developing our territories, we were told to wait our turn. We waited. For 2 centuries we waited. His voice grew harder. Then the came. Without warning, without declaration of war, they attacked They killed 600 million of our people in the first day. Our children, our families, our future. Ambassador Ryu reached into his coat and pulled out a small device. He pressed a button, and a holographic display filled the center of the chamber. It showed documents, communications, intelligence reports. "We have learned something interesting since the attack," he continued. "They did not act alone. 3 members of this conquered provided them with intelligence on Earth's defenses. They knew where our stations were. They knew our patrol routes. They knew the best times to attack." Gasps filled the chamber. Several species exchanged frightened looks. Furthermore, the Conquered's Intelligence Bureau detected the fleet mobilizing 2 months before the attack. They knew what was coming. They said nothing to Earth. They watched as our people prepared to die, and they did nothing. The silence that followed was absolute. Ambassador Ryu let it hang in the air like a blade. For 200 years, humanity tried to be part of this community. We followed every law. We paid every fee. We accepted every insult. And in return, you let our children burn. He straightened his back and spoke his next words clearly. "That ends today. Effective immediately, Earth withdraws from the Galactic Conquered. We will not participate in your politics. We will not follow your laws. We will not pretend that you are our friends." The reaction was immediate. Representatives shouted objections. Some demanded he reconsider. Others threatened consequences. But Ambassador Ryu simply waited until the noise died down. "I understand your concerns," he said. "Many of you are wondering what humanity will do next, whether we will seek revenge against those who helped whether we will use our weapons to conquer as the did." He allowed himself a small smile. "The answer is no. We are not we do not desire your planets. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We only want to be left in peace. That is all we ever wanted." A floating seat moved forward. Counselor of the oldest and most respected species in the Conquered, spoke in her melodic voice. "Ambassador Ryu, the Conquered made mistakes, but surely we can discuss reparations, new agreements, a path forward together. Isolation benefits no one." Ambassador Ryu looked at her for a long moment. "Counselor, I have great respect for your species has always treated humanity fairly. But I wonder, where was that respect when they announced their intention to enslave our people? Where were the when we begged for help? Your silence told us everything we needed to know." A holographic image appeared beside Ambassador Ryu. Admiral Park looked out at the assembly with eyes like winter. "Let me be clear," the Admiral said. "Humanity does not threaten the Conquered, but we will not be threatened either. As of today, human forces hold strategic positions in 40 star systems. Our ships can reach any point in the galaxy within minutes. Our weapons can do things your scientists believe impossible." She leaned forward. "We share this information not as a threat but as a fact. Any species that attacks Earth or its allies will be destroyed, completely, utterly, without mercy. This is not negotiable. This is not open for discussion. This is simply how things are now." The image vanished. Ambassador Ryu remained standing alone on the platform. "The Dominion has formally surrendered," he announced. "Their military is being dismantled under human supervision. Their leaders will face justice for their crimes. We offered them mercy, the same mercy they are people. But mercy is not the same as forgiveness." He looked around the chamber one final time. Humanity came to the stars hopping to find family. Instead, we found a galaxy that saw us as prey. You forced us to become something else, something harder, something that no longer needs your approval or your protection. A door opened at the edge of the chamber. A general walked through, chains binding his arms. Human soldiers escorted him to the center platform, where he knelt before Ambassador Ryu. "This is General," the ambassador said, "third in command of the forces that attacked Earth. He has requested to speak." The general looked up at the assembled species with hollow eyes. His voice was broken. "I have fought wars for 90 years, he said. "I have conquered species that the conquered feared. I thought humans were soft. I thought they would be easy prey. I was a fool." He bowed his head. "The humans could have killed they have the weapons, they have the power. Instead, they only killed soldiers, only destroyed military targets. They showed us mercy we did not deserve. I do not understand it, but I have learned to respect it." The general was led away. Ambassador Ryu watched him go, then turned back to the assembly. "We are not monsters," he said quietly. "We never wanted to be warriors. We wanted to be scientists, artists, explorers. The galaxy forced us to become something else. But even now, even with all our power, we choose restraint. We choose precision over destruction. We choose justice over revenge." He began walking toward the exit. "Remember that, conquered. Remember that humanity, with weapons that could end civilizations, chose mercy. Remember that we could have become the new and we refused. And remember that if you ever force us to become what you feared, you will have no one to blame but yourselves." The doors closed behind him. In the silence that followed, 200 species sat frozen. They had expected threats. They had expected demands. They had expected humanity to act like every other rising power in galactic history. Instead, they had received something far more frightening. They had received restraint, and restraint from those with absolute power was the rarest thing in the universe. Within a week, 12 species had quietly requested private meetings with the human ambassador. Within a month, 30 more followed. The galactic conquered, which had ruled for 10,000 years, had never seemed so fragile. A new era had begun, and humanity stood at its center, feared and respected in ways no one had ever imagined. 1 year had passed since the war. Earth had changed in ways both visible and invisible. New stations orbited the planet where old ones had burned. New cities rose from the ashes of destroyed ones. New defense platforms circled the solar system like a ring of steel teeth, ready to bite anything that threatened humanity's home. Doctor stood at the window of his new office in the Relations Institute. The building was located in rebuilt Seoul, and from here he could see the memorial park dedicated to those who died on Seoul Orbital Station. 600,000 names were carved into black stone walls. He visited those walls every morning, looking for the names of friends who had died while he escaped. Survivor's guilt, the counselors called it. Normal, they said, it would fade with time. It had not faded, but had found purpose in his grief. He now led humanity's efforts to build genuine friendships with other species, not the false friendships of the old conquered, built on politics and power. Real friendships based on mutual respect and shared interests. 12 species had joined the new accord, a loose alliance with Earth at its center. They were not slaves or subjects. They were partners who had chosen to work with humanity because they believed in what humanity represented: strength tempered by mercy, power controlled by principle. Even the had begun to change. Stripped of their military power, forced to confront the evil they had done, some of them had started asking questions their empire had never allowed. Why did they conquer? Why did they enslave? Was there another way to be strong? Had met with representatives several times. They were not friends. That would take generations if it ever happened at all. But they were talking, and talking was better than killing. Far above Earth, Commodore watched the stars from the bridge of the II. She had been captain a year ago, commanding a small patrol vessel and dreaming of promotion. The war had given her that promotion, along with nightmares she could not escape. The II was not a patrol vessel. It was a ghost ship, one of the most powerful weapons humanity possessed. Had earned command through skill and courage, but some nights she wondered if the cost had been too high. She had killed during the war. Not directly, she had never fired a weapon with her own hands, but she had given orders that sent missiles and drones against ships. Thousands of enemy soldiers had died because of her decisions. The counselors told her this was also normal. Soldiers killed. It was their job. They had started the war. Humanity had only finished it. Believed these things, most of the time. But late at night, when the stars seemed cold and distant, she wondered what kind of person she had become. Today, she was not thinking about the past. She was watching a new ship arrive at Earth's defense perimeter, and diplomatic vessel carrying Counselor herself. The oldest species in the galaxy had finally decided to seek formal relations with humanity. Smiled slightly. A year ago, they would not have bothered to send a junior clerk. Now they sent their most senior leader. Times had certainly changed. Down on Earth, in a quiet park inn, a young woman named sat on a bench and tried to understand the world she had been born into. She was 18 years old, too young to have fought in the war, but old enough to remember the terror of those first hours when the sky burned. Had decided to join the fleet. In 3 months, she would enter the academy. In 4 years, she would be an officer. She would defend Earth against any threat, just as Admiral Park and Commodore and all the others had done. But first, she had a question, and the only person who could answer it was sitting on the other end of the bench. Admiral Park was 70 years old now. She had retired after the war, saying that younger officers should lead humanity into its new era, but everyone knew the truth. The war had taken something from her, not courage or skill, those remained sharp as ever, but something softer, something human. She had watched 600 million people die in one day. She had ordered attacks that killed millions more. She had done what was necessary to save her species, and the weight of those decisions had broken something inside her that could never fully heal. Still, when Young had asked to meet her, had agreed. The young ones needed guidance. They needed to understand what humanity had become and why. Admiral Park said carefully, "May I ask you something?" Nodded, "Ask." During the war, we did things that the old conquered laws forbade. We used weapons that could destroy planets. We killed millions of soldiers. We became, paused, searching for the right words. We became something the galaxy fears. My question is, did we become what we hated? Did we become monsters? Was quiet for a long moment. She watched children playing in the park, laughing and running without any knowledge of the horrors their parents had survived. Finally, she spoke. "That is the right question to ask," she said. "Anyone who asks that question is probably not a monster. Monsters do not wonder if they have become monsters. They simply enjoy the power." She turned to look at directly. "We became what we needed to become. The galaxy mistook our kindness for weakness. They mistook our patience for fear. They looked at humans and saw prey. We showed them the truth, that humanity does not start fights, but we end them. Every species out there now knows, harm our home, and there is no corner of the universe where you will be safe." "But the power we have now," pressed, "does it not corrupt us? My grandfather says power always corrupts." "Your grandfather is wise," said. "Power does corrupt if you let it. That is why we chose restraint. During the war, we could have killed we could have burned there to glass. Some people wanted us to do exactly that. Instead, we only destroyed their military. We only killed soldiers. We showed the galaxy that humanity can be trusted with power." She smiled sadly. "Will we always be trustworthy? I do not know. That is why people like you must join the fleet, not just to fight but to remember, to remind us why we fight, to stop us if we ever forget." Nodded slowly. She understood now. The power humanity had gained was not the end of their story. It was the beginning of a new responsibility, to be strong without being cruel, to be feared without being hated, to hold the galaxy's most terrible weapons and choose, every single day, not to use them unless absolutely necessary. "Thank you, Admiral," she said. Smiled. "Thank me by being better than we were. That is all any generation can ask of the next." Later that day, Doctor welcomed Counselor to Earth. The leader was ancient beyond human understanding, her body sustained by technologies that had existed before humans discovered fire. She moved slowly, supported by floating devices, but her eyes were sharp and curious. "Doctor," she said in her musical voice, "I have studied humans for 2 centuries. I thought I understood your species. I was wrong." Bowed politely. "We surprised ourselves, Counselor. Humans did not know what we were capable of until we were forced to show it." "That is what concerns me," admitted. "A species that does not know its own strength is dangerous, but a species that knows its strength and chooses restraint. That is something rare, something valuable." She looked out at the rebuilt city, at the memorials and the new buildings rising side by side. "I came to apologize," she continued. "The knew they were planning to attack. We could have warned you. We chose silence because we did not want to involve ourselves in what we saw as a minor conflict. I am sorry. I was wrong." Felt old anger stir in his chest, but he pushed it down. Anger would not bring back his colleagues. Anger would not heal the wounds of war. Only time and effort could do that. "I accept your apology," he said, "and I offer one in return. When we chose to hide our weapons, we did not trust other species enough to be honest. Perhaps if we had shown our true strength earlier, they would never have dared to attack. We were afraid of how the galaxy would react. That fear cost millions of lives." Nodded slowly. "Then let us both learn from our mistakes. Let us build something better together." She extended a delicate hand, took it gently. "The new accord welcomes he said. "Let this be the beginning of a true friendship." That evening, as the sun set over Earth, a new defense grid came online. Hundreds of stations, thousands of ships, millions of weapons platforms, all working together to protect humanity's home. It was the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. And it was controlled by a species that had chosen, again and again, to use that power wisely. In his office, Doctor wrote the final entry in his daily journal. "We never wanted empire. We only wanted to be left in peace. But peace, we learned, must be defended with strength the galaxy cannot ignore. They watched our world burn. Now they watch us rise. And they will never forget what happens when Earth strikes back." He closed the journal and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were making decisions about humanity. Some would choose friendship. Some would choose fear. Some might even choose aggression, despite everything they had seen. It did not matter. Humanity was ready for all of them. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Earth had struck back with unmatched fury. And now, in the peace that followed, humanity would build a future worthy of all the lives that had been lost. This was the new order. This was humanity's place among the stars. Not as prey, not as newcomers, not as primitives to be dismissed and ignored. As equals, as protectors, as the species that had shown the galaxy the true meaning of strength. And the galaxy would never forget.